Take a piece of wood, or linoleum, or half a potato. Cut away part of the surface so that you leave a raised pattern. Dab the pattern with ink or paint. Put it on a piece of paper and press hard. You have made a print, the exact reverse of your pattern. More ink, another piece of paper, another print, and so on. This is printing. Once you have cut the pattern, any number of prints can be taken from it. In this diagram, you can see exactly what happens. First, the top of the block is cut away. It is then inked. Paper is laid on top. The paper is pressed onto the ink. All the other diagrams in this film will show from the side or in cross-section what is going on. Here is this simple story in cross-section. The earliest idea of printing was by means of a seal, which was pressed onto clay or wax. People have used seals for thousands of years, but it was a long time before anyone thought of putting ink onto a seal so that a print could be made on paper or fabric. The first real printing from large blocks started in China and Japan. Here is how one of the earliest prints was made in Japan over 1,000 years ago. Sometimes whole pictures were printed from blocks of wood. Some of the prints found their way to the West. They were carried from the great Chinese empire of those days, along with the silks and spices that traders brought to Europe. Many hundreds of years later, people in Europe began to make prints for themselves. They set out to find a better and quicker way of putting the ink onto the wooden block. Here they're printing playing cards. Many methods were tried out to get a clear and even print. Printers saw that the firm and even pressure needed for a wine press was made by turning a central screw. Every turn of the screw increased the pressure. The same sort of screw was used to press linen. It was quite a simple matter to use such a press for making prints. The ink was put on the block in the usual way. Then the paper for the print and some sheets of padding. By using a screw press, prints could be made both better and quicker. But all this was only for printing pictures, not for printing words. Books were still copied by hand as they had been for many hundreds of years. Then, sometimes, letters were cut in the block of wood to add words underneath the picture. It took a long time to cut a block like this, but it was worthwhile if hundreds of prints were to be taken from it. Sometimes a whole page was cut in wood for printing. This was an even slower business. Each letter had to be cut separately every time it was used. Now, the 15th century in Europe was a time of many new ideas and inventions. People wanted to read about them, but they still could only get books copied out slowly by hand in the old way. A new invention was needed to produce more books. Very secretly, in the town of Mainz, in Germany, a man called Johann Gutenberg was working. He was a well-known businessman. Everybody believed that he was making mirrors. Yet his neighbors wondered why Gutenberg needed so much material and why so many workmen were employed. Why did he borrow so much money and yet apparently did so little business with his mirrors? He kept running up enormous bills for lead and for carpenter's labor. Eventually, the secret came out. After 20 years of experiment and using other people's ideas and money as well as his own, Gutenberg had managed to do something that had never been done before. He had printed a magnificent Bible. Not just one, but 200 copies, all exactly alike. He had discovered a way of printing in one single day as many pages as a man could write by hand in a whole year. Many people said it was impossible. It must be the work of the devil. In a book which was printed soon after the Bible, they showed pictures of devils working a printing press. Other wiser men traveled to Mainz to find out how it was done. They learned Gutenberg's secret. They learned all about the experiments which had been going on in the workshop. They learned how the paper had to be damped before the print was made. They saw the printed sheets all hung up to dry. They learned just exactly how the press worked. First, one half of the page was printed. The pressure was released, and then the other half was printed in the same way. Soon, printing houses like Gutenberg's were set up in other places all over Europe. Our own William Caxton went to Germany to learn all about this wonderful new trade. Later, he returned to London and set up the first printing house in this country. Our first books were printed at Caxton's Press in Westminster, near the Abbey, in 1476.